Hello and welcome to a new episode of our program, Cairo Local Time. It's Tuesday afternoon. I'm Yasmin Bakir. We're going to be shedding light on the latest news updates that are happening concerning Egypt during the past 24 hours. And the second half of this episode will be discussing thoroughly the upcoming parliamentary elections and what are on the agenda and the priority list for this new parliament that will be inaugurated very soon before the end of this year. As usual, we're going to go out on the short break where you can be able to contact us through our different media outlets, and we'll be back right after this. Welcome back. We're going to start off with the first news item. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has issued directives on Tuesday for the integration of the Bardawil Lake Development project in part of the general strategy in the framework of developing Sinai as a whole. The directives included providing all the factors that are needed for the success of the project, especially the technical studies and the qualified administration. The directives was also issued during a meeting with the Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli, the Marine Forces commander and the head of the Belgian company that is currently undertaking the projects in Egypt. The meeting aimed to tackle the current and future projects by the company and the comprehensive scheme for the development of Bardawil Lake in northern Sinai. The spokesman, Ambassador Bassam Radi, also said that the meeting had discussed the expected outcome of the project, including making use of fisheries in the lake and investment output given the distinguished site of the lake, as well as the vast outcome from providing job opportunities, food security and economic revenues. In another news that we're going to be also tackling today, and President al-Sisi directs the government to expand its efforts to be able to implement the electricity linkage projects. And President al-Sisi had ordered the government to expand the efforts of implementing more electricity interconnection projects with the neighboring countries. Here's the story.
In a meeting with Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli and the Electricity Minister Mohammed Shakir on Monday, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi called for intensifying work in linkage power ventures with neighboring countries. El-Sisi said that electricity production should be maximized to meet local demands and export surpluses to countries that are linked with electricity grids. Egypt has signed agreements with a number of countries, including Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and Iraq, to establish electricity grids as part of the country's plan to become an international energy hub. A trilateral interconnection grid between Egypt, Iraq, and Jordan is due to be set up as agreed upon during a tripartite summit held in Amman in August to enhance cooperation in all fields, especially in energy production linkages and infrastructure. The presidential spokesman Bassam Radi added the president was briefed on the latest developments concerning linkage power projects with Sudan as well as with Jordan and Iraq. He was also briefed on the latest developments concerning a number of national electricity projects that are being implemented in Sinai, the South Valley, and the new administrative capital. El-Sisi also ordered the expansion of renewable energy projects in partnership with the private sector, as well as continuing efforts to upgrade the electricity system in Egypt as part of the state's developmental plan. The president also directed the government to maximize the use of state-owned assets in all fields. This direction was declared in a cabinet meeting chaired by Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli with Minister of Agriculture and Land Reclamation, Mr. Al-Qusayr, and Deputy Minister for Livestock, Fisheries and Poultry Affairs, Mustafa Al-Said, to follow up on a fishery project. The Minister of Agriculture updated Madbouli on a project aimed to utilize untapped areas and water resources in fish farming via technology to achieve the highest rates of production and disseminate awareness of the importance of fishery production for Egypt and the Arab world, the statement added. And in November 2017, President el-Sisi inaugurated a number of major projects in Kafr al-Sheikh with a total cost of 4 billion Egyptian pounds, topped by Middle East's largest fish farm and its industrial city.
Still with more news, in Egypt is going to be having its first virtual business week event that had kicked off on Monday. And the event is organized by the Egyptian British Business Association and the Egyptian British Chamber of Commerce. Here's the story.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli stressed Monday that Egypt and UK have long-standing strategic relations, as he highlighted both countries' cooperation in different fields. This came in Madbouli's address before the Egyptian British Chamber of Commerce during the virtual inaugural session of the conference under the rubric Egypt Week, Way Towards Sustainable Economic Growth. In his words, Madbouli asserted that Egypt is keen on building strong partnership with UK. He thanked the EBCC and the British Egyptian Business Association for the efforts exerted to organize the event, which aims at boosting partnership and cooperation between Egyptian and British companies. He pointed out that President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson agreed in January on the sidelines of UK-Africa Investment Summit to intensify economic partnership to support Egypt to develop sustainable economy for the benefit of coming generations. Madbouli said that they discussed the cooperation between Egypt and the UK in the field of education in addition to the needed reforms to boost the private sector in Egypt and promote economic growth. The Premier said that the African continent became one of the most important destinations for international companies and international financial institutions. He also asserted Egypt's keenness on building strong partnerships with the UK. Meanwhile, addressing the virtual meeting, Minister of Planning and Economic Development Hala Said revealed that the government is continuing to pump more public investments to implement new projects and provide better services. Said said also that public investments in Egypt rose by 70% to 595 billion Egyptian pounds. The minister added that the novel coronavirus COVID-19 crisis prompted a rearrangement of the country's priorities, which led to an increased focus on specific sectors and activities. These included education, health, communication, infrastructure, agriculture, industry, and green economy.
Also in other news, the Finance Minister Mohammed Maid had said that Egypt's budget has lost 220 billion Egyptian pounds in revenues in the fourth quarter of the 2019-2020 fiscal year due to the coronavirus pandemic. Speaking in a televised interview, the minister said that until the end of June, the country spent up to 65 billion Egyptian pounds out of an 100 billion Egyptian pound financial package that earmarked earlier this year for fighting the coronavirus pandemic. The package was allocated in accordance with the directives that have been issued by the president in March to finance a comprehensive plan in order to stop the spread of the virus. In a bid to curtail the pandemic, Egypt has adopted lockdown measures in March through July, which included a nighttime curfew, suspending air traffic, shuttering on schools and universities, closing mosques and churches and banning public gatherings. However, the government had begun the move towards a gradual reopening of the economy last June. News concerning the parliamentary elections of 2020 and the results of the second phase of the House of Elections that will be announced on November 15th. The National Elections Authority, the NEA, that is headed by Judge Lashin Ibrahim, will be announcing the results for the second phase of the House of Representatives elections on November the 15th. Now, a total of 31 million Egyptians were eligible to cast their votes on the 13 governorates that were included at the second phase of the parliamentary elections. Here's a look at the second phase in this report.
The National Elections Authority (NEA), headed by Judge Lashin Ibrahim, will announce the results of the second phase of the House of Representatives elections in November 15th. The two-day phase ended on Sunday, followed by the counting process by heads of the 9,468 polling stations in 13 governorates. A total of 31 million Egyptians were eligible to cast their votes in the 13 governorates, namely Cairo, قليوبية, دقهلية, منوفية, غربية, كفر الشيخ, شرقية, دمياط, Port Said, Ismailia, Suez, North Sinai, and South Sinai. The runoff elections for the second phase will be conducted abroad from 5 to 7 December and locally on 7 and 8 of December. The first phase of the election was held for Egyptian expats abroad from 21st to 23rd of October and locally from 24 to 25 October. The runoff election of the first phase will be held abroad from 21st to 23 November and locally on November 23 and 24. Announcing the results of the first phase of the National Elections Authority announced the turnout in 14 governorates was 28.6% as almost 9 million out of 31 million eligible citizens voted. Regarding lists, the national list for Egypt won the electoral districts of Upper Egypt composed of 11 governorates and Western Delta composed of 3 governorates, securing 100 seats in the former and 42 in the later. It was competing against the Egypt's coal list. The final results of the parliamentary elections are to be formally announced by the National Elections Authority on December 14th. According to the updated voters database by the National Election Authority, a total of 63 million Egyptians are eligible to cast their votes in the two phases of the parliament elections.
More news about gas exports. And the Egyptian Minister of Petroleum, Tarek al-Mullah, said that Egypt has a gas export capacity of around 1 billion cubic feet per day. He also noted that Egypt has reached daily gas exports of 300 to 800 million cubic feet per day. Egypt has made a series of oil and gas discoveries in the recent years, most notably the giant Zohr gas field. Speaking on an oil for reconstruction mechanism between Egypt and Iraq, al-Mullah had said that the matter is still under discussion and has not yet reached a final deal. On a medical front, and we're going to talk about the recovery rates in Egypt from COVID-19 has hit 91.8%, according to official numbers that have been called out by the Ministry of Health, and who had announced earlier that the recovery rates from coronavirus pandemic in isolation hospitals has hit 91.8%. Now, the total of 103 patients left hospitals after receiving necessary medical treatment, and the total number of recovered cases have reached over 100,000. Egypt ranks the 49th among the world countries in terms of recovery rates, which stands at 93.2%, and ranks 141st in the world in terms of total infections per 1 million people. For his part, Dr. Hussam Hosni, the head of the Scientific Committee to Combat Corona, the Ministry of Health and Population has prepared a grand plan to confront influenza and corona infections in the winter season, stressing that schools plan to confront the coronavirus guarantees full protection for all students. More news also about the Ministry of Health, and 1.4 million school children in Egypt are screened for either anemia or obesity or even dwarfism. Now, the Minister of Health and Population, Dr. Hala Zaid, said that more than 1.4 million school children have been screened for anemia, obesity, within a campaign targeting the screening of 14 million school children for such diseases. Now, the campaign was launched earlier in November, 2 weeks after the academic year of 2020-2021 has begun. The campaign will conclude by the end of the academic year, taking place in over 29,000 schools across the country, including also Egyptians and foreigners who are studying in these schools. More about discoveries in Egypt and artifacts, and we're going to talk about Egypt, who's announcing the discovery of 100 more coffins in Saqqara alone. Now, according to the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, who is currently preparing to announce the largest archaeological discoveries in Saqqara Antiquities area in a press conference which is expected to take place in the upcoming few days. Sources at the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities did say that the excavation of the Egyptian missions operating in the area had resulted in the discovery of more than 100 coffins, which are indeed in good condition, and that includes coffins for senior statesmen in this era and priests from the specifically 26th dynasty. This comes after the excavation have already uncovered earlier 59 coffins, and these newly uncovered coffins were found inside a new barrier shafts that have not been opened at all for the past 2,500 years. And from the Ministry of Culture, we have an implementation of the directives of the President, Sisi, who's asking for the continuance of the implementation of the axes of sustainable development in a field of preserving the heritage identity. Now, the Minister of Culture, Inas Abdel Daim, had announced the start of the admissions of students to the second batch of the Egyptian Industrialists Initiative, organized by the Cultural Development Fund sector. Now, this application is to be submitted during the period between the 10th and the 30th of November. Abdel Daim did say that starting the implementation of the training for the second batch of the Egyptian Industrialist Initiative, which was, by the way, launched earlier in July back in 2019, reflects the Ministry of Culture's intentions to continue its efforts to replicate the success of the first batch of the initiative, which aims to revive the traditional and heritage crafts as well as preserve its position. Also, in a very soft front as well, Egypt is to launch Cairo Jazz Festival on Friday. Now, more than 25 jazz bands from over 10 countries are flocking to Cairo as the Cairo Jazz Festival kicks off a challenging 8-day edition on Friday. The festival activities will be held in various venues in Cairo, with performances from Switzerland, Denmark, Chile, Croatia, Netherlands, Romania and many Arab countries. Now, the festival is sponsored by the European Union and other local and international entities. It is scheduling a number of workshops, exhibitions and seminars, with many artists giving their first performances in the year of the coronavirus. Founded by Egyptian-known musician Amro Salah in 2009 to promote jazz music in Egypt, this festival is hosting prestigious artists from across the globe throughout the years. And for those who are in love to listen to Arabic traditional music and are very much aware of this annual festival that takes place at the Opera House in Cairo, Egypt is currently hosting its 29th edition for the annual Arab Music Festival and Conference. Now, this year there are 93 musicians who are participating in this festivals. We have 82 singers from different parts of the world, specifically 5 countries, namely from Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq and Tunisia. And to know more about this festival, and of course you can always go back to the website of the Opera House to know the schedule, but more about the festival in this upcoming report.